Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to the TRE podcast. I'm your host, Matt Celesio, here, joined by an incredible guest. We have Charisse Cooke in the studio, online, not really in the studio, but really grateful to have her here. Charisse, thanks for coming on the show.
Hi, Matt. It's great to be here. I'm really super excited. And I feel like I am in the studio with you. Let's pretend that I am.
I love it. I love it. Now, when I start my episodes with my guests, I always ask, do they have an intention for my listeners coming in today? It's a new audience for you. You're a new guest for them. What's your intention behind the episode today?
My intention is to really share about relationships and attachment theory in a way that people can understand and it can really help them in their lives because it's a massive subject. It's really complicated. And obviously, I love talking about it and I want to do it in a way that really, I hope, adds value and can really enlighten people about how they can be using attachment theory to have the best relationships they can.
Definitely. And it's a topic that's really gaining a lot of traction on social media, in the media. Everybody's talking about it. So the fact that we're able to sit down today and just dive deep into it is really powerful. And I know you're just coming out with a new book. So a big congratulations on that. I want to give you the stage here to just tell listeners what this book is all about and how you're going to break down some of the things around this topic.
Thank you. Yes, it's really exciting. My book is launching in the US and Canada in the next couple of days. It's been out in the UK for a couple of months now. But yeah, it is a book all about attachment. It's called The Attachment Solution. And the title is really key because there's a lot of problem in our world. Oh, you have this attachment. That's a problem. This is a problem. Oh, be careful. Don't do that. And I, as a psychotherapist, I like to focus on solutions because we all want to know what to do about the stuff that we need to work on, right? So there's been a little bit of a criticism on attachment books in the past where they're not really clear on what to do about it, how to be secure, and it's not very optimistic and hopeful, whereas that's not me. I'm very, very positive, and we all have the capacity to change and grow, and that's the whole crux of the book. It's about learn about your attachment style and then learn how to draw on the best that your attachment style has to bring and to work on the stuff that can be difficult for you sometimes.
Perfect. Yeah. Well, even looking at the initial outline that you sent me over, just to get a little idea for this episode, like my whole life kind of made sense. Like, oh, that's why I did that. Oh, that's why I did that. So it really is insightful and very educational. And I wish I had a lot of the information that we're going to speak about today at the beginning of like my high school journey, like just looking from when you're just a young kid to where you are now. That information is incredible. Now, I want to just lay the land for the people today. I want to make sure we're all on the same page. We define where we're going to talk about. What are the different attachment styles that you're going to bring in the book that we all need to be aware of?
Well, broadly, we are either securely attached or we are insecurely attached. If we're securely attached, as the name suggests, we're really secure, we're content, we're satisfied, we are okay in relationships, we don't have issues getting close to people, going to people for support, supporting people. It's sort of okay. It doesn't mean they're not problems, doesn't mean that, life is easy, but it means that there's not a lot of defensiveness and dissatisfaction in the relationship. So that's amazing. I guess that's what we're all aspiring to be. And some of us, can be like that most of the time, but in times of stress, that's when a more insecure way of relating can come out. And this is where the insecure attachments come out. And there are four there are four attachments and there are three insecure attachments. So the first one is anxious attachment. And then there's avoidant attachment, of which there are two. There's fearful avoidant attachment and dismissive avoidant attachment. And these are ways of relating that are more stressful, more defensive in nature, more fear-based, and they have very specific ways of being in relationships that can cause problems.
Yeah, I can see where a lot of them will come out in different people. And another question I have for you is, let's say you're seeing a person initially, and then you see another person after on romantically. Now, based on those people's behaviors, and if they're a little different, could you be anxious in one relationship and then I guess avoidant, and you just have different attachment styles, even if it's different romantic relationships? Is that what I'm hearing you say at some points?
100%. I think that's something that we really need to realize now. And this is also something new that I talk about in the book, which is in days gone by, we've sort of been like, you are this, or I am anxious, or I am avoidant. And actually, relationships are much more complex than that, and as humans we're much more complex than that. So we are always scanning the horizon. We're always checking out who we're with and the environment that we're in, and how safe we feel, how confident we feel to be ourselves. And so we'll assess, and depending if we're with a really great group of friends that we feel great with, or we're in a work situation where we're quite intimidated by some people, or we're feeling nervous, those are going to evoke different responses in us. But the example that you give, I think, is also a really interesting one, because what I observe a lot is sometimes we can have a not altogether healthy relationship where, for example, we can be quite anxious. And that because it's gone so badly in that relationship, in our next relationship, the pendulum can swing and we can almost become avoidant and be like, I'm never doing that again. I'm never going to go through all that anxiety and pain and upset again. So now I'm just going to be, strong and hard and not let anything in. And we can actually then become quite avoidant. So it is interesting to notice how we change in our relationships, and be really, something I talk about a lot is how I want us to stay true to ourselves and our own integrity. How do we want to behave? Because in our attachments, we are often in constant reaction to our partners. And then, our self-control and everything about our lives is outside of ourselves, and that isn't very empowering.
You know what I really love that you said about that is being in this reactive state in those insecure
Mm.
attachment styles. I was actually having a conversation with my friend last night about that, on that topic of romantic relationships. And looking back at times, like me personally, like if I never felt in control, like let's say the girl's taking long to respond, they're being a little flaky. I'm in
Mm.
this very reactive state, and I'm always asking myself, how can I do this? How can I do that? How can I get her back or get her interested again? Meanwhile, when I'm in like a secure energy where I'm talking with a girl that's giving me the time of day, they're interested, I don't have any reactivity. I'm coming from this place of abundance where I say, you know what, here's what I want to do for this girl. Here's how I can
Mm.
elevate this girl. Here's how I can add value. And it's not from that state of reactivity and scarcity. It's coming from a place of I want to give and I'm overflowing. And it's really powerful to see like I'm the same person, yet I'm acting
That's it.
very differently in these two different scenarios, which could even be like months apart. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, 100%, Matt. That's exactly right. It's sort of, we can pay attention to what is evoked in us by the people that we're dating or we're seeing, or we're interested in, because what can happen over a period of time is that we become people that we're not, and we behave in ways that we don't like. And I always ask my clients, I'm saying, I'll say to them, do you like who you are right now? Do you like yourself in this relationship? How do you feel about you? Forget about the other person. What about you right now? And when we're feeling good about our behavior, when we're feeling that we're being loving, we're being open, but we're also being boundary and looking after ourselves, that's where mental health and relational health lives, right? We have self-esteem, we look after ourselves, and we're not overanalyzing our relationships. We're not overly anxious. We're not overly shut down and angry. We're not having unhealthy interactions. So I think that that's great for you to recognize that, and we need to notice, okay, hold on, I'm being pulled into a dynamic here that doesn't feel comfortable, doesn't feel great. Is this what I want? Probably not.
Yeah, checking in with yourself, it can be huge because we don't usually do that when in a reactive state, right? We're just playing catch up, keeping our head above water, and that's when we get lost. But what I'm
That's
hearing you
right.
say, it's almost like you want people to cultivate this strong self-concept where you have boundaries, you know who you are, what you value, what you'll tolerate, and things like that. And me personally, I have been in times where I've been, you know what? I'm going to be on my goals. I'm working on my business. I'm going to be going to the gym. I'm going to do all these things. I don't have time for a girl. I would never give her the time of day. I'm busy. I'm doing myself. I'm doing my thing. Now, I want to know where the fine line is between having a powerful self concept in that way, like you're going about where you're going, and being dismissive and numb because you've been maybe hurt in a past relationship, you were anxious in a past relationship, and you don't want to experience that again. And this new self concept that you're building is just a smokescreen to eliminate some of those things that can go wrong for you and hurt you again. So, where's that fine line? Where's that gray area?
Yeah, I mean, it's a really great question, because this is really the work. The work is, how do we have appropriate relationships, but how do we also have a really big life, which is really important, that we all need. We know we've all got our dreams, we've got our ambitions, we've got things that we need to be focusing on. And sometimes we can become very preoccupied with our relationships, or they take over and they dominate our space. And if that's happening for a long period of time, then that's not really kind of healthy. So I think, again, just coming back to this idea of really kind of defining who you want to be. And I also encourage, I actually talk about this in my online course, which is have a vision for your relationship. We're really great with having a vision for our businesses and our lives or our fitness goals. There's so much clarity there. And we can and should have that about our relationships too. It's a little bit different because it's about the kind of communication we want or how we want to feel or how much time we spend together. But that's actually a really great way of staying true to something that feels right for us, and that is really, really healthy. Because if we don't really have a vision and we're not really thinking about what we want and where we're taking ourselves with someone, we can end up choosing people who are fun for sure, and maybe that's fine. If your vision for this relationship is to have fun, that's great, but we can get a bit pulled away. But just to your point about, fearing that we might become a bit colder or a bit more emotionally shut down. I think that's really, really key, that we have to recognize in ourselves how open we are to people and to things, because I think as a safety mechanism, we do close. And that's actually a very desirable place to be, because then we don't have to deal with messy feelings, and we're maybe not going to get sort of hurt, and we kind of feel a little bit bulletproof. And that, especially if we've been hurt in the past, that's a really nice place to be, actually, and a preferable place to be. But relationships do require an openness. They do require a little bit of vulnerability. So I think just really being clear on what you want. If you want to focus on your work, focus on your work. But if you're wanting to do your work and have a great relationship, there needs to be space for both. So there needs to be time when you can be open to intimacy and letting someone in, if that feels healthy.
Yeah, it is. I know what you mean. It's very safe. You don't have to get hurt. You won't get scuffed. And yeah, the word you use, bulletproof, like that's exactly how you feel, right? And you're again in that state of control at that point. It's not a reactive state that you're in, right?
That's it. That's it. And I think it's sort of useful to think about, and this is really how I work, which is it a defense? Am I brave and open to the world, or am I actually in a defense? Because most of us spend a huge amount of time in some place of defensiveness, and it's so normalized for us, we don't even realize it. When we're being a bit shut down, that's a defense. When we're being a bit offhand and dismissive, that's a defense. When we're being really anxious and preoccupied and upset, that's a defense. We're in fear. We're in protection mode. We're not, I'm okay in the world, and I'm open to opportunities, and I'm open to what's going to happen, and I'm open to love. So it's kind of, we have become, I think, very accustomed to living in some kind of a defense most of the time. And that's the most courageous thing we can do in our world today, is try to be defenseless,
Hmm.
so we can be who we are, and we can practice courage and bravery, and we can learn the tools and skills to look after ourselves in ways that are healthier than either pushing people away and sort of shutting down, or kind of behaving in ways that feel embarrassing, or kind of compromising because it's too much, or we're sort of, putting ourselves out there too much in a way that doesn't feel cool. So it's just, I think, recognizing we need to constantly be asking ourselves, is this a defense, or where is the defense in what I'm doing? And do I need to be doing it?
Yeah, that awareness is huge. Like we spoke about initially, and I'm looking back at to where I was maybe a couple of years ago in terms of how I was attached to certain women or even platonic relationships or whatever it was. And like you said, getting out of that defensive state, the one thing that really helped me, and you could probably shine some light on this too, was diving into like my own kind of cognitive behavioral therapy or affirmations that allowed me to change my belief systems to not show up attached or not show up anxious. And I'll give like a really great example is the sheer fact that when I say I'm open to receiving this, I'm open to experiencing this, and I'm okay even if it doesn't work out, or if it does, it allows you to go into these relationships not with that reactive, clingy, anxious energy. You're coming from a place of, like you said, openness. And if it works out, it works out great. But if not, I know where my path is. I know who I am, and the right partner will come. The right friends will come. But shifting those belief systems was the first step for me actually getting into that energy. What's your opinion on that?
I love that. I love that because we can contract into that fearful space so quickly and so easily. And then again, we're in that reactivity of what are we going to do, and how we're going to manage this, and I'm not going to be taken for a fool, or whatever the sort of thought process is. But actually, there is no greater self-esteem and self-worth just being ourselves and knowing ourselves really, really well, and being that, and being apologetically that, or unapologetically that, because we need to be who we are. As you were saying earlier, this sort of concept of ourselves is so key and fundamental. And that's what we lose. There's often, in our relationships, there's often a loss of self on some level. And people will say things like that when relationships don't work out. They're like, oh, I didn't even know who I was. I didn't even recognize myself by the end. I mean, who was that person? Why was I doing that? And it's kind of, I think, psychology teaches us that we all want love. We all really, really, truly want love. And what we will do for that love is pretty much anything. It's often a very young part of us that comes out when we're engaging with others and when we are trying to be loved. We're just humans wanting to be loved by other people. So it's inherently so vulnerable. And that's the thing that we try to defend ourselves against. So being who we are, and maybe being hurt or maybe being misunderstood or whatever, doesn't actually matter. What matters is that we stay true to who we are. We can get through it.
Powerful. Yeah. It helps you maintain that self-identity, even with or without a partner, which I think can move mountains in the way that you feel, the way that you show up in business, relationships. Like it's got that spillover effect. And where I want to transition now, looking at some of the points in the book that you sent over to me, or that outline of the book, you said that statistics say that 20% of us are anxious, 25% are avoidant, and never have we ever been more anxious and insecure as a species in our romantic relationships. But then the real kicker of that point is that those numbers are set to increase, which was really surprising for me. So I want to know, like, what part or parts of our generation do you think are the biggest contributors to this rising trend? Like, what do we got to look out for here?
Mm. Well, I think that, the answer to that is that we are all becoming more anxious. If we unfortunately, if we look at how many people are on anti-anxiety medication, a lot more people are in therapy, which is obviously great, because those are tools and skills that we all need to develop. But our world is becoming much scarier. Modern life is extremely stressful. And our ability to have relationships is becoming less and less, because we're actually much more focused on our own individual lives. We are much more interested in our own fulfillment, our own dreams coming true, doing things the way that we want. 50, 60 years ago, that isn't how we went into relationships knowing we have very clearly defined roles, many of which were oppressive and really not great. But there was clarity around what to expect from relationships. And what we expect now is everything. We want our partners to be our best friends, our confidants, our cheerleaders, our loved ones, our co-parents, our soulmates, our twin flames, our biggest cheerleaders. And all of that puts a lot of stress on us, and we're already stressed. So I think that's what's difficult. And that's where I'm saying, like, so much comes down to fear. We're so frightened in our relationships, and we're frightened in the world. We're full of anxiety. We're full of fear about what's going to happen, about the future, but also in our little lives, we are wanting so much. And that isn't great for our nervous systems, and that isn't great for our relationships. So yeah, it's all set to kind of keep going. So looking after ourselves and learning skills are really, really important.
Well, one thing that, again, relating to what you just said, the biggest learning that I took away in my journey of being single to being in relationships, like just that, the relationship aspect of my life, I found that I would always expect every person to be the community. Really, like what you were just saying right there. And I would always ask myself, like, why can't I find a girl? Like, I don't understand. I'm scratching my head. But like you're saying, you're placing so much expectation on this one person, which can be very unhealthy for you because it's kind of unrealistic. And then for that person to live up to that unrealistic expectation. And the thing that I took away from that, rather than having a list, all this criteria, and being really anxious around finding that person, the one question I ask myself now is, how do I feel when I'm with this person and when I'm away from this person and after we hang out or after we're together? And that for me, at least personally, has been the biggest indicator of whether or not I want to continue seeing this person or whether this relationship is going to be healthy. So again, or what I did was clarify. I became really self-aware and then just kind of grounded myself rather than all of the externalities that maybe are perceived, they're unrealistic, and they don't actually pack a punch in a relationship.
For sure, that's it. And I'm so glad that you realized that. And it's such an unfair pressure that we put on ourselves and we can put on other people. And then we miss all the gorgeous bits. We miss the bits that are really lovely and are really supportive or are really special. It's kind of, in a way, these expectations that we can put on others sets us up to be disappointed. And I think that that's such a key thing. When I'm working with people, this is a theme that comes up so often, which is disappointment. We feel disappointed by our partners, or they let us down, and it's difficult for us to move on from that. And whilst a lot of that might be valid and important, it's also about what are we expecting all the time from these fallible human beings, just like we are, by the way. We are so fallible. But, it's kind of, there is something about feeling disappointed. I say, feeling disappointed is a bit of a trauma response because we're going back to a place where we're just let down by people to the point where we're almost expecting to be let down by others. And that's when we're sort of in trouble because we're setting ourselves up there.
So it's almost like we do it to ourselves. Like all of these things we're asking for subconsciously, we're just setting ourselves up for that disappointment. Is that what you're saying?
100%. I mean, I think that's what's really interesting especially about attachment theory, is that you can see these are all patterns of relating. So we've learned this, whether it was previous relationships or from our childhood, or probably a mixture of the two. We have learned how to have relationships, what to expect from relationships, what to expect from other people, what people who love us do or don't do. When we were young, how much were we listened to? How much were we encouraged? How much were we smothered? How much were our parents just not even around? That is how we learn. That's how we imprint. Okay, that's how valuable I am. That's how important I am, or that's what I can expect from the world. Or if our parents were arguing a lot and they had their own issues, then that's like, oh, right. So that's what relationships are. It's arguing and, fighting a lot of the time. That's what we learn. I always say love is learned. We learn what love is. It's not, we don't know objectively what love is. We are taught, we're shown because of how we are loved growing up and how we are loved in our relationships. And there's a lot of stuff that happens and that we experience that is not love. It's
Wow.
our defenses, it's our own traumas, it's our own insecurities that we project. And so we will unconsciously set ourselves up to fulfill the patterns that we expect based on our previous experiences, because that's what humans do. We recreate what is familiar over and over because that's what we've learned that love is and relationships are, and we will seek to recreate that.
Wow. Wow, Charisse, what a tidbit for the morning. That's incredibly deep. And the thing that
Yeah.
I'm taking away from that, and I just learned this, where at least I'm getting more awareness after you just said that, is the traumas or the experiences or the learnings that we bring in to our current relationships, whether it's anxious, insecure, whatever it is. It not only comes from romantic relationships in the past, but like you said, family, friends, parents, like
Yeah.
it's areas of your life you wouldn't even think actually guide you down a path. So how do we as humans not bring all those past baggages into our current relationships, whether it's familial, platonic, romantic? How do we not let that screw up another relationship?
Well, firstly, let me just say that this is what everyone does, and 99.9% of people don't realize that that's what they're doing. And that's why it's really fascinating in therapy to sit with people and to explore with them. Okay, gosh, oh, so this sort of happened. Oh, that sounds a little bit like when your father would sort of go away quite often and wouldn't really acknowledge that, and you'd just be left on your own. And oh, but didn't your previous relationship, didn't this also happen? Or didn't your sister kind of be really rude to you and cruel to you most of your life, and now you're finding someone that's really cruel to you in your life now? it's so important that we raise awareness of what our patterns are, because they're so unconscious, they're so entrenched in us. We just don't even know that they're there. It's just the air that we breathed. It was what we thought life was and relationships is. And it just becomes completely our own reality, our own subjective reality based on the experiences that we've had. So our awareness has to be, we need to be awake to what's going on. I know I need to be careful because I really can go into people pleasing, because when I was young, it was a bit, stressy at home. And I realized that when I was good, it was okay. And I got hugs and I got attention. So now I'm a bit of a people pleaser. I don't make waves. And so when my partner's upset, I'll just pacify them and keep everything okay. I don't want to deal with conflict. Conflict is too scary. I saw conflict growing up. And so that's not something I do. Hold on. I need to recognize conflict's part of life. And I'm bringing baggage into my relationships now where I'm avoiding that and actually keeping myself really small and not having a voice in my relationships now. So I've got to learn how to have an appropriate voice. And what some people then do is then they become really, angry and vocal in their relationships like that. That isn't the answer either. It's about learning. This is something I learned in a bit of a dysfunctional way. I need to learn how to be healthier in this way. And that's just one tiny example. There are so many examples about all the stuff that goes on in relationships, about what we expect, how we'll, engage with people, things that we'll do. All of that is so, is all learned behavior, and it's unconscious. So unless we become conscious of it, we're going to keep doing it and not even realize it.
Okay, so let me ask you, Charisse. I want to get a little personal here without giving too much personal info. What was one area that you overcame that maybe you thought it was a reoccurring pattern for you, where you go, I need to just nip that in the butt and do it in a healthier way?
Oh my God, so many, so many. Um, I guess I think there were times in my relationships where my father's Irish, so I'm half Irish, and we were both very, very volatile with one another growing up. And that was normal for he and I. So we would have these big, like loud, volatile interactions, and the rest of the family were like, "Oh my God, what are we going to do?" And I took that into my relationships because it was normal for me to raise my voice or say how I felt in whichever way I wanted. Quite frankly, I didn't have to worry about you and your feelings. I didn't have to think about that. I would just like vent, because that's the Irish in me, but that was also what I did with my father, and he was actually the closest relationship I had. And so I had to realize very quickly, in also my friendships and also my romantic relationships, that just because something feels normal for me and okay for me, because I could get a little bit of flack as well and be like, oh, well, whatever. I realized that not everyone was like that, and it wasn't fair for me to talk like that. And actually, it could be very cutting and very painful and very hurtful to the people that I love. And again, this is for me something I use as a guide. It's kind of, I love this person or I love my friends. I don't want to hurt them. And even though for me it's not a big deal, it is a big deal for them. So I've had to work really hard. I'm a passionate woman. I'm half Irish. I've got a lot going on. I've got to rein myself in. I've got to rein myself in, and then start having a family, and then you have kids. You've really got to rein yourself in, because the emotions come up and I just want to react on them, and I'm going to do it and say it and then sort of regret it later. So I've had to learn to really notice my tone of voice, my volume, the language that I use. I've had to work really, really hard over the years to rein that in. And it has been difficult, and I'm not saying it's easy, but I feel really great about it now. And what I do now is I use a lot of humor. I bring in sort of other parts of my ancestry that are great, like humor and kind of playfulness. And I bring a lot of that in with my family, because that's a passionate, positive way of getting stuff across and lightening the mood, but also sort of not, communicating in a way that isn't fair and doesn't feel great. So that's just one tiny example of many things I've had to work on in my life.
No, well, kudos to you for having that awareness and overcoming that. I like what you said about how patterns can be normalized and it's very subconscious at that point. And I want to bring in somebody who, let's say, maybe isn't in a relationship to understand how you can stop normalizing that behavior. And it comes
Mm.
from looking at, and I've done this myself, is all the past women that I've taken out, whether I've seen them for a while or whether just gone on a couple dates here and there. The patterns that continue to bother me, I've noticed, like as I look at them from a bird's eye view, I go, these are the same things in different forms. What is the lesson here for me to learn? And it wasn't until
Mm.
like it usually takes like 3, 4, 5 times because we humans, we're not very sharp in that sense, which is okay.
Yeah.
But looking at it from what patterns are showing up across different people, that will allow you to understand what you need to overcome, at least in my opinion. And then
Mm.
when at times I'm in relationships, let's say for an ongoing extended period of time, you notice that a lot of the disagreements or the little bit of the friction that comes in always has the same underlying behavior. So
Mm.
again, taking that step back and looking at what is reoccurring is one of the best places I feel like you need to work to overcome or to just gain awareness to know that's where I need to focus.
Perfect. That's it. I love that. That's beautiful. I mean, and first of all, I just want to say it's to be expected. Okay, that is going to happen. There's just no two ways about it. People are going to push our buttons and we're going to push their buttons and we're going to choose people who are familiar and that people are going to choose us because we're familiar. So these moments, unless it's sort of we're in a really negative situation and it's deeply compromising, and obviously if it's abusive, it's completely not okay, but it's kind of this is where the magic can happen in our relationships. This is where we can sort of heal one another. And really, this is where the opportunity lives because, yes, it's going to bring up all our old stuff and we're going to react the way that we react and we're going to make the assumptions that we make. But there's an opportunity to do something different. And, the first thing I would do with a client is I would say, why is this familiar to you? Why does this keep coming up? And then we can track it back to something because there's an emotional component to it that's often historic. And this is sort of we can recognize this in little scripts that we have about ourselves in life, for example. So and often clients will just share them and I'll immediately know that's a script. So a script could be, well, I never get what I want, or no one listens to me, or women are this, or men are this. That's something that they've literally learned and is now a part of their belief system. So once we sort of know, okay, hold on, I'm reacting the way I'm reacting because actually I feel hurt. When that person does that, the reason why it hurts me is because I don't feel heard. I feel like I don't matter. I feel like I'm being disrespected, or or they're just being unkind, or whatever it is. We can sort of establish that, and then that's when we can do something different. So it would be like, okay, well, what would I naturally do? Oh, well, I'll give them as good as they get, or I'll just shut down, or I'll walk away, or I'll get really worried, or whatever. And it's kind of like, well, what would be something different? How can we bring in new behavior? Because we will do old behavior over and over and over again, and we need to really strive to be doing new behavior so new things can start to happen. Because if you think about it, we've got all these neural pathways in our brain, and those are set up. We've got these highways when it comes to relationships. This is how I do things. Okay, this is how I'm feeling. Okay, this is what I know I need to do. And to bring to use our consciousness, to use our self-awareness, to be like, I don't want to do that anymore. I want to do something different, is hard because it's a completely new behavior. So we've got to create literally a new neural pathway everywhere. So I want to react. I want to get angry, but I've got to breathe, take a time out. I've learned I've got to take a time out, then come back and then talk calmly and quietly for like 3 minutes. And then that's enough. And then we'll come back to it later. And you start experimenting with new ways of doing things that are based a little bit more on being constructive and being helpful and being loving. That's going to get a useful outcome. But that's very, very difficult in the heat of the moment. But doing things differently has to become part of our repertoire for sure.
Yeah, yeah. Well, even like the way you said familiarity, we're always seeking out the familiar, even if
Yeah.
it's not beneficial to us, right? It's what we
Yeah.
know. It's easier to dance with the devil you know versus the devil you don't. That's kind of my opinion
Right.
on that.
That's
And
right.
I always wonder this in the modern dating world because we like to seek out relationships that are going to bring us that negativity or that comfortable familiarity. To me, that
Yeah.
makes sense because that's how we've learned, that's how we've adopted. Like you said, those neural pathways are continuing to fire easily. So
Mm.
that's why we're going to seek that out. Now, my question is, because I can't wrap my head around this. Let's say you get into something that is healthier, that is different than your norm, that they're giving you healthy behavior. It's very secure, but maybe you're not a secure person. So that's when you start saying, you know what? I don't know about this person. I can't get close to this person. And then you end it almost like kind of a self-sabotaging situation. Why do we do that? To me, it's incredible that that's something that we even fathom after we find out exactly what we're looking for in that case.
I know. And it's such a tragedy, isn't it? Isn't it? This is where we as humans, we are so complicated. And yeah, that's right. And I've seen that happen with so many of my friends, so many of my clients, 100%. And this is where I think we really need to use the pain of the past to inform us and change us a little bit. Because sometimes, and I'll see this with a lot of my clients, is they will meet an incredible person who will be an amazing partner to them. And because of their baggage, they don't value those aspects of this person, right? So like I'm saying, love is learned, and we attract what we're familiar with and whatever. But what that also does with us, which sounds weird, because it's like, well, we're just kids, but is that what it imprints in us is what we will find attractive.
Mm.
So not only is it familiar, but it's what we are going to find attractive, because we love our mothers and fathers, okay? Even if they are terrible at times, we love them. We want them. We want their care. We want their validation, their attention, their kisses, their cuddles. So that's our first love affair. Our very first love affair are with our parents, and then like really key friendships, and then obviously growing up, and then we actually get into sort of more adult love relationships. So that imprints in us, this is attractive. So this is where you'll find people going for these volatile people, or these unavailable people, or these people that are very high conflict. Is because we've learned in our attachment system, that's attractive, that chemistry, I like that, that's what I want. We haven't learned, oh, my nervous system's deactivated and it's calm and easy and no problems, and that's so attractive to me, I love that. It's kind of, that's where the problem kind of lies for us. So we, in a way, we need to do some difficult work and use our pain to begin to change all of that, and to see it for what it is, and to really begin to value and find attractive different things. So I can tell you now, I'm a little bit older than you, further down the line, what I found attractive when I was in my 20s and sort of even early 30s, I look at now and I can see with crystal clear clarity exactly what that is going to be about. And I do not find it attractive. But show me a really sweet, cool, lovely guy who's going to make me laugh and is really, really chill and has no kind of issues with sort of me as a woman doing what I'm doing or whatever. I find that extremely attractive. But all my life experience, I've consciously used my life experience to see that, to the point where I've matured my attachment system. If you think about it, we stay stuck in these young ways of like, oh, well, we just want all these young things that we want. And then we stay stuck there. And as we have our life experiences, we need to mature into actually that woman who can hold her own and communicate calmly and respectfully. That's pretty damn attractive to me right now, as opposed to this really sexy, slightly messy person over here, or whatever it might be. This is where we can really, again, use our awareness to let love grow. I think that's also important, is that we're all waiting to fall in love and feel that attraction right at the beginning. In healthy love, for me, that isn't how it goes. We don't fall into love, we walk into love, as one of my clients says very, very beautifully. We make decisions, we make choices based on what's going to be good for us, rather than these short-term chemical feelings we might be having.
That's incredible, Charisse. And what I'm really loving about what you're bringing forth right now to the conversation is showing the depth and complexity behind love and attachment theory. And I know from our earlier conversation, like the new rise on social media and the prevalence of this attachment theory has just really been taking off. But it might oversimplify this concept. It might not dive into the detail that you and I are diving into today. That maybe people are getting misguided information or even negative information that could send them in an entirely different direction. So, like, where are some things that you see are misguiding or oversimplifying this topic on social media? Like, what do we need to look out for to say that isn't, I know that's not beneficial information because it's everywhere. It's everywhere, right?
Absolutely. I think, anything that is too extreme. So, for example, avoidant attachment is looked at in a very negative light. And this is where I sort of burst people's bubble and be like, well, you know what? We're all quite avoidant. And even if we're super anxious, trust me that at the root of that is a form of avoidance, because being anxious is not the same as being intimate. So that's an avoidant process kind of right there. So I think there's something about a sort of slight demonizing of certain attachment styles, and it's really important for me as a clinician to do away with that, because it's so much more prevalent than we realize it. And certain parts of avoidant attachment are just neglected by people, and we just think, oh well, they're avoidant, there's nothing they can do about it. Whereas I work with a lot of avoidants who want to work on their stuff and want love and want to kind of grow and do better and figure stuff out. And there's a particular part of avoidant attachment, which is fearful avoidant attachment. It used to be known as disorganized attachment, which is kind of hardly ever spoken about, because it supposedly affects such a tiny portion of the population. But in my experience and my belief is that actually many of us are fearful avoidant attachment, which in its simplest term just means that we're a little bit of a mixture of both. We can be highly anxious and we can be highly avoidant. And so we often then get stuck spinning our wheels in relationships, too scared to move forward. And then we'll just leave a relationship very, very quickly. That happens all the time in our world today. And that's fearful avoidant attachment. So one of the big things that we can do to sort of help with the education and growth is to not be so extreme in how we view attachments. Attachments are just useful little clues into our lives about the stuff that we can work on.
And then slowly piece together and mature, as you said, throughout your journey. Bring those little nuggets and bring them throughout the journey, because that's where you're really going to materialize that success. Yeah.
Definitely. That's right.
Okay, Charisse, I want to wrap up with this last final question here. And this was my favorite part of our conversation that we had initially before this podcast, getting in alignment. You said that people don't demonstrate their love. And for me, that was very, very powerful, because we always think, everybody's a mind reader. They know exactly what we want, but we don't demonstrate it. We don't communicate it. And I know we all have our own attachment style, but now we're welcoming in another partner, a friend, a family member with a different attachment style. So what's the first step to navigating this, to demonstrating this, even though there's so many different variables to these attachments that we're interacting with?
Yeah, I love that. It's kind of, love is one of the best parts of our life. It's one of the best things to experience. It's one of the most beautiful and rewarding things to be part of. And yet it's something I feel like we're sort of losing sight of more and more with every year that passes. So yeah, I mean, from an attachment perspective, is that we are all spending much too much time in fear. And that's part of being so defensive, like we were talking about earlier. So we're coming from a place of fear. And that we can see that in the way that we argue, how high conflict we are, how much we can often withhold, and we detach from people very, very easily, or we become so anxious, which is obviously a fear-based process. So there's so much fear there. But when I'm working with people and I talk about their demonstrations of love, what do they do to show their love? It's kind of fascinating, because people will say, well, they know that I love them, or, well, I do this and this, and that's loving. And then I'll ask the partner, does that feel loving? And they're like, what on earth are you talking about? No. So I love starting this conversation between people about what feels loving for you. What do you receive as love? And then conversely, what doesn't feel loving? And that can then really give us such an amazing guide to where we want to put our efforts, because we put a lot of our efforts into doing or thinking about our relationships or worrying about our relationships, but maybe we don't put a lot of time into thinking, here's one thing that would really meaningfully enhance this person's life and show them a beautiful bit of my love that is really, really clear. And I would feel so wonderful to do that because I know how much joy it's going to bring. And especially when you're working with people who've been in a relationship for a while, trust me when I say that goes completely. And, we're just like pieces of furniture, sharing a home or sharing a life. So I love asking people, what do you feel? What do you experience as loving? And share that with your partner. But I think there are also kind of old-fashioned things that we all need to start doing more. And that is things like being very, very patient with one another. There's a lot of impatience and we get angry with people very, very quickly. There isn't patience. There's not tolerance. Highly intolerant we all are these days. Very, very intolerant. And we're very intolerant of differences. When we're dealing with another person, it's just going to be differences all the time. Opinions, ways of doing things, their perspective on things. And we are intolerant of that. It feels overwhelming and scary as opposed to just someone being a little bit different to us and us having to tolerate the discomfort and pain that can bring up. And then finally, I just love the idea of acts of love every day, to really focus our minds on doing something loving every single day for someone that we do love, because I think we live in a bit of a sort of neglect crisis where we're neglecting ourselves a lot of the time, but we're also neglecting the people around us. So a little bit more effort every day into something loving. That's definitely what I would advise.
I love that. I love that. And actually, to wrap up here, it reminds me of an Instagram reel I saw the other day, and it stopped me in my tracks because it gave me goosebumps. It was just one sentence, and it was just like stock footage of people doing their thing throughout their lives. But it said, "Be patient and kind to your parents, to your partner, to your siblings, to your friends, because it's the first time they're experiencing life too." And it just really served as a reminder to say, if I'm going to be kind to this person, here's how I can elevate their life. Here's how I can be patient with them. Like, we're all just figuring it out. We're all doing the best we can. And having that one sentence top of mind for you can really help you navigate any relationship. Like, I want to get it tattooed on my chest. Like, it was so good
Yeah.
as a great reminder. So I think it really speaks to cultivate and culminate everything today. And I just want to say, Charisse, thank you so much for spending some time on the podcast. Absolutely power-packed conversation. I want to give you the spotlight super quick to say where listeners can find you, connect with you, get the book, because you have so many great assets in the digital space. And I want to make sure that listeners can connect.
Thank you, Matt. Yeah, I'm on Instagram every day posting daily reminders, things to do, little guides, and that's at Charisse Cooke. I've also got a website, charissecooke.com, where I've got a lot of free teachings, just a whole therapy experience that you can go through for free, which teaches you everything that you need to know about attachment, but also the therapy process. And if you really, really want to go deep, I have a course called 10 New Behaviors, which is what we've been talking about today, which is how can we implement new behaviors into our relationships and not keep doing the same old stuff over and over again. And of course, there's the book, The Attachment Solution. It should be available anywhere to order online. It is international, but particularly in the States and Canada, it's now available. So I'm really excited. It's all about the solution. It's all about what to do. It's me being a little bit bossy, showing you, guiding you, reminding you. And yeah, I'm very proud of it. And I think it could help a lot of people.
Absolutely exceptional. Listeners, we're going to link everything Charisse just said in the show notes, wherever you're listening to this to, Spotify, Amazon, Google. Have a look over to her stuff. She's remarkable. And I want to say again, Charisse, thank you so much for today.
It was an absolute pleasure, Matt. Thank you.